right, everybody, welcome back to the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. This is the second hour of our show today, and my special guest today is Michele Tracy Berger. Thank you, Michele, so much for being on the show with us today.
It has been just an honor, and I feel that we are vibing. And you at the break, we started to talk about the ways in which indie publishing gives us different opportunities than traditional publishing. I wanted to come back to that because I think it's so true that a lot of writers historically will aspire to think that there's only one way to be a writer, and that is to be traditionally published. And I mean on the scale of like novels, let's just say. And I think that's changing, and that's an erroneous concept. I know traditionally published authors who are successful but not very happy, partly because of the things that you mentioned. You're treated, if you're with the big five, you're often treated in ways that are not always so nice or kind, or feeling like you're part of a team. And indie publishing is also about a type of freedom and as well as excellence. So it's not like people can say, oh, well, it used to be that people thought indie publishing, was just sort of like, if you couldn't get into traditionally published, then you did indie publishing. And that's not true. One, as you know, a lot of quote unquote traditionally published writers are making choices to do both traditional and indie. But I also wanted to say a little bit about the kind of friendship and support that happened. So I have to say, this novella grew out of, or really got excerpted from, about a 400,000 word, and yes, I mean 400,000 word, sort of, I won't say failed novel,
400,000 words?
Yes.
That's not a novel.
Yes.
That's like an epic.
It's epic. It's great. It is like multiple.
I mean, like that is
so,
every second of every day of every month of every year of that person's life. Like, oh my gosh.
Right, absolutely. Right. And so
how did you whittle that down to a novella?
Well, so I did what a lot of writers do, and this kind of goes to writing community as well. So for many, many years, I wrote what I call metaphorically in the basement. So it's like I was in the basement, so to speak. I didn't let anyone see my work. I would go to writing conferences, but I really didn't have literary community. And
you didn't have your tribe yet.
I absolutely, and I didn't have the tribe. That's so important. And there's only so much. You can be the cleverest person, and there's a lot you can teach yourself with writing, with craft books and all of that. But really, you need to find mentors. You need to find allies. You need to find readers. So,
you need to find critics too, people that are willing to tell you about yourself sometimes.
Absolutely, and that's how you grow. But
yeah.
So I was able to find that, and I had a sort of a friend mentor who finally said, you should start taking out, parts of the work and start submitting it. And so I did that. I really looked at what was the core of this crazy, sprawling 400,000 word novel. And the core was always the novella, because that's not what I started with. And so I sent that in. Book Smugglers, which is a wonderful, it's a booksmugglers.com, I think, is the website. They were actually a publisher for a long time. They started out as reviewers of science fiction and fantasy, and then they grew into a small publishing, like a micro publishing press. Well,
nice.
They did a call for novellas.
Nice.
And so I submitted it, and I was one of the novellas chosen. So it was originally published in 2017. And Adam, I'm just, I was like so excited. I was just getting my feet wet as an author, having a taste of the author life, all of that, in terms of having this, larger story. And then in 2018, I kid you not, right around before Thanksgiving, they let all their authors know. They said, we are getting out of the publishing business, and we feel really bad about that. And these are great editors. Anna and Thea are wonderful editors. One lives in Brazil, one lives in New York, and they were running this along with their full-time jobs. And so you can imagine. So my novella was only out for a year. I was doing readings, all of that, and everything came to a screeching halt. And so they said to me, look, we really, not only to me, but I'm sure some of the other authors, they said, look, we really believe in this work. We think that you can find another publisher. You can retain the rights. The rights will revert back to you, and look for a publisher locally.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to John Hartness of Falstaff Books, and I had met him prior to that, but we didn't know each other well. And I, pitched him. I sent him my work, and we sat down, and it's really about, relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful that, and so happy, and he's delighted that we are pursuing this work. So he brought the novella out in January, and then I'm contracted to do a horror novel, which I'll talk about later on. But the most important thing is this idea of writing community. So I feel like with a large publisher, like I said, I have friends who've been traditionally published, and they don't always speak kindly about those relationships. So what you're saying in terms of being in this world and making friendships and supporting people, I mean, that's been my experience. I have been traditionally published in one sense, but also I've worked with a lot of quote unquote indie authors who've done anthologies, who put together different projects, and I've always come out of it, like you said, with more friends and with a broader network than just by going to literary conventions or, I've done all of that as well. But I do think there's this kind of this real generative, let's support each other kind of spirit in the indie publishing world that is exciting and something I'm drawn to.
I love that. Talking about the difference, traditionally published and working with a small press publisher, Falstaff Books. Actually, they have quite a few books. I think they have almost 200. John was on the show. Yeah. I think they have almost 200 or over 200 titles in publication right now. So, I don't know what qualifies as small anymore, but 200 is awesome.
Right.
And,
right.
The neat thing about it is James Nettles, Jim was on the show, and Jim does a lot of the IT side, and he also does a lot of social media side and stuff like that. And, and I feel like they have a great group of not just the staff people, but also their authors. They have, obviously they have a vetting process, and myself as a small publisher, small print publisher, I can tell you this much: when you put an open call out, you get a lot of you get a lot of stuff. I literally asked for with this last anthology. I'm working on publishing. It's coming out in October. I literally had to.
I can't wait.
Yeah. I had to ask for. I did an open call for. I had 2 story slots open, and I asked the authors that were already there, if they could refer somebody, because that's going to be better than just an open call. And I did an open call, and when you have a premise, it's okay, here's the premise. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for an XYZ story, right? Let's say they're looking for a detective story. They get an open call. We want to do some detective stories. We're getting an open call for detective stories. But then you send, not you, but the fledgling author or whatever. Then that person sends a story that's been sitting in their shelf for the last 5 years. It's not a detective story. It's a story about a clown. But it's finished.
With no detective.
With no detectives. Yeah. That's what happened to me. And I was like, why? And I was talking actually to Bobby Nash, who's another Falstaff author, and he's also in the my book. He's got a short story called Dante's Tenth that's going to be in the Devil's Due. Bobby and I have been friends probably since 2014, and he's been on the show quite a few times. But we were talking, and apparently that is an issue with publishing, that some authors they spam whatever. And I imagine it's a lot like with HR, people send their resume in, or they send their application in, if they're severely underqualified, for the position. They're just like, I'm just going to apply anyway. Like, it's like, no, don't do that. If it's a good fit, why waste anybody's time? Because the next time you send me something, I'm just going to be like, no.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important with the relationships, is because, if someone were to say to me, like, hey, I know that you're doing an open call for a detective story. I like what you're doing. I don't have a detective story, but I have a story about a clown. Would you be interested in looking at it and, maybe a consideration for a future whatever? I would totally be open for somebody doing that. I'd be like, yeah, because they're being professional. They're already saying, hey, I know that I'm not meeting your need and I'm not trying to waste your time, but I have this other story that maybe, in the future would work. I would be totally up for that. I'd be like, yes, this is great, But somebody who's just going to blind spam me something. And I had one, it's so crazy because I had two people that I replied back and I said, this doesn't meet the premise at all. And I was like, did you read the open call? Did you read through and what I was looking for? And they wrote back, they're like, well, I just thought, you might want to check it out. No, I don't want to just check it out. I don't want to just check it out. I don't want to read your 5,000 word short story just to check out and find out that it's not anything. I'm sitting here reading, expecting some kind of, somehow it's going to be incorporated or somehow,
Right.
And then I get to the end, I'm like, why? Why did you do this? Why did you do this to me? Let me hold on for a second. Let me do the station ID. I'm sorry, because we have to do it at the 15. But you're listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. I am so sorry to have to cut you off there, Michelle. What were you saying?
Oh, no worries. I was going to say I'm struck by your kindness, because most editors would not even take the time to email someone back. So I think that's the sense of, you are trying to build this community and give people the benefit of the doubt. But the reality is that you're working hard, and aspiring writers need to understand that it's not an us versus them. Like, editors, and correct me if I'm wrong, you want to be able to say yes to a story, but you also are asking for it to be like in the right format, to address the call, like basic things. And I think so many aspiring writers, because I've heard this from other editors as well, that they just don't understand why people don't adhere to the guidelines. And it's to me, I just feel like it's disrespectful. Like, unless you query someone, like you said, like if they queried you ahead of time and said, hey, and if you happen to know them, but even if you didn't know them and they were like, hey, I'm not sure if I should send this, here's a little synopsis, would it be okay to send that? That's different. Mm-hmm. But editors, it's so much work. I admire, like, I have not edited my own anthology. It's something that I would like to do down the line, but it's so much work. I think the longer that I've been in this writing as a professional, the more I really understand the labor of love, because it's not just about the money, right, at all. It's the labor of love and the love of the written word and trying to support other writers. And I always try to tell aspiring writers, yeah, you don't want to piss the editor off. You want to build, even if they reject your work, if they like your work, if you rejected someone's work, you might say, okay, it's not right for this anthology, but, I will probably be doing another one, send me something later. But if you piss an editor off by doing the things that you just said, they're not going to do that. And that's the relationship that you just lost.
Yeah. And I think the biggest, I'm not going to say that I want to say yes to every story, because I don't. And I'm just going to say that because the reason is because I want to say yes to the right stories. I want to say yes to helping people who are showing a promise of, some kind of aspiration or some kind of, like they've got a budding talent, or they've got, like this, intense passion about what they're doing. It might not be a right fit right now, but I don't like to just, indiscriminately, turn somebody away. But the reason why I don't like to just say, yes, and I'm not like just trying to say yes, and I know this might not sound the same as like other people, but it's because of my own development as, you know, a writer and as an author. I don't feel like I like when people give professional criticism. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not professional about it, especially like online trolls and things like that. But I like when people are you know, willing to give you professional criticism. You know, like in the academic world, for example, peer-reviewed content. You know, there's a lot of politicking that goes on with that. But if you have, you know, like say for instance, if you're going through your graduate level program or your doctorate program or whatever, or your undergrad program, if you have a good study buddy who is willing to give you honest feedback and they're willing to give you critical, you know, review of what you're doing, I feel like that's the difference between saying yes and wanting to say yes. I'm looking at like, okay, well, is this a good fit for them and me? Is this a good fit that's going to be mutually beneficial? Because if it's not, it doesn't mean there's any hard feelings, you know?
That's right.
It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that, you know, hey, I like your work, but it's not a good fit for this. And I'll give you an example. Had an author that I really liked the premise of their story, because on the anthology, and I'm going to do it differently next time, but this anthology, I asked for 100-word blurb, and that was the premise. You sent a 100-word blurb, and I'll let you know if I want to see, you know, a treatment. So I did that.
That's nice.
Yeah, and it was
a very economical way to go about like getting a sense of the writing.
Well, yeah, and if you know, like if you can't write a blurb, and you can't capture somebody's attention in, you know, the first 10 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever, you know, it's going to be hard, you know, not a lot of people are going to invest in you know, like a longer pitch or whatever. But anyway, so it was like we went through the premise pitch and or the blurb pitch or whatever, the log line pitch, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different names for it. But we went through that. I asked them to send me a 500-word treatment. I like that. And then I was like, okay, yeah, let's move forward with the story. Well, everything was fine. Then the pandemic hit, and the publishing date, I decided, because of a number of my authors were having a lot of difficulties, I decided to move the publishing date back from May 26th, which is Dracula Day, to Halloween this year. But before that happened, the guy sent me a message saying, hey, you know, I'm going to also publish this story in another anthology, and it's coming out before yours. And I was like, no.
Wait a minute.
I was like, no.
No, because that's called a reprint, and you were probably looking for original work.
Yeah, all of the stuff was original, unpublished stuff or whatever. But I just told him no. And you know, the thing was that he hadn't sent me the full story yet. We'd gone through the motions with all the other stuff. There was not a signed contract yet either, because you know I did the signed contract. I didn't do a signed contract with a promise to work. I did a signed contract with the ones that delivered the work and you know, paid the authors whatever, but there wasn't a signed contract. But you know, the thing was for me was that, you know, that experience for me, I was like, wait a minute, you know, we agreed to this, we had a verbal agreement even though it wasn't a contract, and you know, and I understand the opportunity to be able to, you know, publish it, but what it taught me was that this guy had pitched the same story to several publishers, and I was the first one to bite, and then somebody else came along and, you know, bit on it as well. And then he decided that he wanted to double dip, basically. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, nothing personal. I don't have any ill will towards the guy. No hard feelings towards the guy. But, you know, it happens. You know, so as a small publisher myself, having to learn that process, it's like, you know what? It doesn't mean it's not a, you know, good thing. It just might not be a right fit. You know, and I love the fact that you're very professional about, you know, your demeanor and the way you carry yourself, and you know that I just, that's what I feel like we need more of, because like that stigma with the indie authors or the small print authors or whatever, because really the difference between the line between an indie publisher, a small print publisher, and an indie author is who's doing the heavy work after the writing. You know, like who's doing the editing, the, you know, all that, the formatting, all that. And, you know, so it just depends on how the business is set up and, you know, those kind of things. But there's a very thin line between publishing and self-publishing. when you're a small print publisher or an indie publisher. Now, a guy like John and his crew, 200 books, like they started off with his books, you know what I mean? And they built up,
right.
And so now they're, they're a medium-sized publisher. I wouldn't even say they're medium. I think they're starting to become like a bigger, small print publisher. As far as I know, they're one of the biggest ones, as far as, indie authors or small print publishing authors. I know some indie authors who have, a couple hundred titles under their belt, and they're making, 6 figures a year. I know some people like that, but that's the rarity, and I really don't know anybody else that does small print publishing that has, 200 titles from different authors, so.
Well, I just want to say, you can't see me because we're not on Zoom, but I was shaking my head vigorously, just as that is like the classic don't do what your author did, that, the simultaneous submission, and especially once you've entered in. So just, for your listeners, simultaneous submission, that means you can submit your story, to anyone, unless there are guidelines that they only want to look at your story.
Well, and I don't, I agree with you. I don't ever say like you can only submit to me, but like if you submit to me and you agree that we're going to write, publish a story, it's like, well, then you recall the other ones. Like you say, well,
absolutely. And the fact that the fact that they then said, oh, well, they made an agreement with you, and then they backed out of that or wanted to now have it as a reprint. Yeah, I'm just like, that is a no. That is not at all acceptable. And I think when you're, to me, I feel like I'm in this point in my life where I waited it took a long time to get here, right? So it took a long
400,000 words later.
Right.
It's amazing.
I have an academic career,
and
I've made more space for my creative life, and so I want to do everything. One, to not piss people off, not to piss editors off, and two, to show. I mean, I think you want to show the people that you're working with that you are serious, and indie publishing is in some ways a misnomer, because like you indicated, you're working with a team. Like, publishers work with a team. Like, if you're quote unquote doing self-publishing, you're still working with a team. You've got to work with a cover designer. You may work with a developmental editor, and all those people you have relationships with, right? And like you said, it's the scale of publishing, that in terms of when we really think about what are the expectations that for publishers to do. So most of the time now, it's a sense of shared, like, you're going to do some things, for your anthology, and I'm sure you're going to, market and do other things, and you bear the cost of putting it together and all of that. But then I'm sure you're expecting authors to do their part of promoting.
Ooh, that's a good one. Hold that thought, Michelle, real quick. I've got to do the station break, but yes, I want to talk about that since you brought it up. Hold that thought. We're going to be right back, y'all.
State Department of Public Health. When the Georgia Department of Public Health gets a lab-confirmed case of COVID-19, they will let the public know. The Georgia Department of Public Health updates its website, dph.ga.gov, every day at noon with a map of confirmed cases around the state of Georgia. More information can be found at dph.ga.gov.
WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
How many times have you heard WRUU's corporate underwriting message? If you remember it, then your potential customers will remember your message as well. We are offering this space to connect corporate and institutional partners with our loyal and active listeners. Underwriting on WRUU is short, so listeners don't tune out. It's exclusive, so your message won't be lost in advertising clutter. And it supports Savannah's only community radio station. For a marketing package to increase your reach beyond traditional media, email underwriting@wruu.org.
All right, everybody, and here's Sebastian Messer playing a little bit of live music here on WRUU. best. Thank you so much, man. I love that. I love the way that you make that Ovation guitar sound. It's really good. Sure. Hey, Michelle, you there?
I am.
Awesome. So I want to jump right back into that. So right before the break, could you premise it? Could you tell us what you were talking and you said about asking me about a question I want to answer?
Yeah. So, in terms of some distinctions, writers, if you're quote unquote self-published or indie writer, because people use that simultaneously, you're working with a team of people.
Mm-hmm.
You're working with cover designers and editors, and if you're working with quote unquote indie publishers, small publishers, and then on up the continuum, there's some expectations that they're going to provide an editor, they're going to edit your work, they're going to promote your work. But what some writers and authors have real challenges with is that it's a relationship and that you should market. So if I was in your anthology, your next anthology, which I'm
we're going to talk about that too. No spoilers. No spoilers.
I would expect that, okay, as the publisher, you're going to get the word out. You're going to do a variety of things, take out ads, maybe go to a con if that's a possibility, all of that. But then my job is also then to spread the word. And I like to use the quote by Tim Grahl. He talks about platform. He says,
"Oh, I love Tim.
Isn't he great?" And he basically has this quote that says, a publisher can magnify your platform by 10%. But or 10 times what you have, he said, if you have zero platform, that adds up. 0 times 10 is 0. So he's like, you really need to establish and think about what you bring to the publishing relationship. And I feel very strongly, I'm very passionate about that. And I think authors, that's part of the world we live in. And to learn how to do that as a skill and creatively is really, I think, an important piece. And I feel like that's what I bring. So when I went to when John Hartness and I were talking, he could see, here's what she does. She runs a blog, she's active, she does Twitter, she's engaged in the world. And so, and I said, look, I will help you sell this book, and I'll help promote it, and I also will help your other authors, because I think that's the other piece of being in this shared world, is that especially in working with smaller presses, so at Falstaff Books, we really support each other, we promote each other's work. And you've had several of the authors on from Falstaff Books, and there is this kind of,
you want to know something really funny about that though, is like I said, I've been friends with Bobby Nash for a while now, and I'm also friends with Rachel Brune, who Corn Girls Press, right? So you're going to be in her anthology coming out in October, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so reason why I bring those two people up is that Bobby was a friend of mine that was introduced to me from another friend named Randy Bishop. I met Randy here in Savannah. He's a comic book creator. He does the Hawk of New York, which is one of my favorite comics. I love it. And he says to me, hey, you need to meet this guy, right? So Bobby and I, we become friends. He's been part of my conventions. He was like one of my first guests, yada, yada, yada. Great guy. And I'm going to bring him back up in a second. Rachel Brune. Bobby introduced me to Rachel Brune in 2018 because that's when I published my first fiction work. It's called Blood Thrasher. It's a vampire novel set here in Savannah. And so she interviewed me for her infamous Scribbler blog. This is before she founded Corn Girls Press, but she had worked on multiple anthologies as an editor and publisher with helping, but not as her own publisher. So the following year, she asked me if I would be interested in being part of her anthology, Corn Girls Press, the Stories We Tell After Midnight. And I was like, yeah, I would love this. This would be great. Great experience. Loved working with her. So much so that I asked her if she would be part of my inaugural anthology. So she has this wonderful detective story that's going to be in it. And
Oh.
yeah, so it's just a wonderful detective story that's going to be in it, about a deal gone defunct, and like it's just, I think it's actually some of her best writing that I've read, because I've read a bunch of her books and her writing's all really good, but like when I read this one I was like, wow, you've really been working on your craft, you know. And so circling back around with Bobby, and circling back around about, you know, the publishing relationship between publisher and author. It's the same thing that you're talking about. I completely agree with you. It is a give and take. But what I've also seen with big house publishers is they look for people with a following. They look for people who have, you know, a presence. You know, that's part of the deal now with the packaging. That's part of the deal with the, you know, the licensing or whatever. Because I've talked to published authors with some of the bigger houses. That's one of the things that they look for, is like, you know, how big is your sphere of influence? How big is your push or whatever? That is just part of today's world. The social media side of things, you know, people are followers or whatever. It doesn't matter so much about like the likes or those things. It's like, you know, who are the real people who are engaging, you know, with you, you know? And so when you have, you know, your folks that, you know, love what you do, and every time, you know, you talk about, you know, this or that or the other, they're like, you know, your supporters, you know. We all have our group of people like that. That's what they're looking for. So going back to the author's responsibility is, and I've you know, I take this very seriously myself as an author and also as a publisher. When I was published with the, so I'm a journalist for the Savannah Morning News, do Savannah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't advertise their stories. I don't publish any of their stories. What I do though is like I'll amplify the signal. I'll share that stuff, you know, when it comes out. When I was published with Rachel, I did a lot of my own advertising for that, you know, promotion, advertising, that kind of thing, you know, talking to authors from the book on the show, you know, just talking about, you know, what's going on. Not so much like on the show, we're not promoting, we're not trying to sell anything here because it's community radio, but just talking about like, hey, this is what we got going on or whatever. So it is the author's responsibility to help with the success of that story. Because, you know, just like anything else, nobody's going to love your baby as much as you love your baby. And nobody's going to, you know, I mean, like, I don't know why there's this, you know, concept out there that, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be famous. It doesn't happen that way. It does not happen that way. And, you know, with a group of people, like I was talking to Bobby Nash the other day, you know, with any group of people, you know, it's just like any dynamic you have at any kind of job, any kind of wherever you're working, you always have, like, for example, I've hosted a lot of different volunteer events and things like that. And you might have 10 people that say that they're going to sign up and going to come and help volunteer. You might have 5 people, if you're lucky, that show up. You might have 2 of those 5 people who are actually the workers. The other 3 are like, you know, helping a little bit, but they want to socialize and they want the feel good part of saying they're volunteering. Same thing with group dynamics at work. You got the people who are going to do the work, and you're going to have the people that want to tag along and say they're doing the work. It's just the way it is, you know. And the thing with an anthology is, I'm, you know, dealing with the same kind of thing. You know, I've got promoters who are actively, you know, promoting the book. I have other people that are doing nothing. And, you know, and I'm not angry with them about it, but I am a little disappointed because I'm like, you know, hey, I paid you for the story. I didn't do an advance royalties. I gave them a flat fee because if I were to do advance royalties, it'd be like, well, you know how many books you have to sell to make a $50 advance royalty for ebooks? You know,
Right.
It's quite a bit. I mean, like, each author would be responsible to sell pretty much 50 books themselves. As an indie author, I'm not going to ask somebody to, you know, say, hey, I can guarantee I'm going to sell 50 books. right? I don't think that's fair, because maybe they can, maybe they can't. But, you know, it is everybody's responsibility. Like, if you sign up for that, if you sign up for a project, you know, it is your responsibility to help with the success of that project. You know, it's not just like, you know, hosting events and stuff like that. You know, I've had some events that were really great and people would show up. You know, I've had other events where it was kind of flat and people, you know, like I had with the author thing, the last author thing, I had 25 authors. Well, not this last year, but the year before. Had a nice venue, a lot better venue than the first year. Had 25 authors, and I had 25 fall vendors. And what we did was I made this, you know, it was like a fall festival type thing. So we had 50, between authors and vendors, we had 50 vendors. We had 30 people show up. It was flat. I did everything I could to promote it. I was on local TV. I was in the local newspaper talking about it. You know, and I had one lady come up to me, and she's kind of just, you know, nasty about it. And I asked her, I said, well, who did you ask to come out here? Did you get 2 people to show up? You know, I mean, like, I had 30 people that showed up just for me, that I know that came out because of me, you know? That's the responsibility of everybody. It's like, you can't just say, you know, one person. Like, you couldn't, if your book falls flat, you can't say, well, John Hartness didn't, you know, promote my book. It's not gonna, you know, it wouldn't be right to even try to shirk that responsibility. But that's what I see a lot with folks, you know, and like, it's like this magical formula or whatever. It's like, no, there's no magical formula. It's like, you know, if every one of the authors said, hey, well, for example, I firmly believe in buying your own product as well. So like, if you're an anthology author, you should buy a copy of that anthology. And I know some people are like, well, why should I buy it? Because I'm an author. I've got paid to be in. Because you should buy your own product. You know, like if you're the company president of Levi's jeans and you're wearing Wrangler jeans, there's a problem. You know, if you don't buy your own thing, you know, but that's another thing, you know, with the promotions, like, you know, if every author said, hey, you know what, I'm going to send this out to my people that love my stuff. I'm going to say, hey, you know what, I'm in this anthology coming up, or I'm in this book, or I've got this whatever. You know, you might enjoy reading this if you've enjoyed my other stuff. You know, it's available for pre-sale, or it's available for this and another. And the folks that are doing that, we're making headway with that. The other folks that aren't doing that, you know, they take a little bit more, I don't know, pushing. You know, it's like, hey, you know, not coercion, but, you know, just a little bit more like, hey, you know, can you help get the ball rolling? You know, can you help with...
Well, some of it, I was going to say some of it, too, just as I think some of it is, and I'm not sure you can know this when you sign an author, some of it is, some people feel like they don't have the skill, like some writers haven't, so it's, I think, a couple of reasons. So one, some writers haven't absorbed the idea or believe the idea that it is their responsibility to make either the book, if it's their own book, or the anthology a success. And they don't understand that. So that's one thing. But then the second thing is that some people don't have the skills then. They might want to, but they don't really know how to. And so what I've seen, I'm assuming that you probably doing some of this, but what Rachel Brune and some other anthologies I've done, I've seen the editors basically say, look, I'm creating a Facebook page. Mm-hmm. Here is a media kit. Mm-hmm. You know, here's the launch date. Here's some things I'd like everyone to do. Now, of course, like you said, there's, you know, some people are just not going to be as engaged, but I do think I'm seeing more of that, like, and it's probably what you're doing, leading by example and trying to give people some of those, at least like baby steps.
Well, I give them the tools. Like, for example, you know, give them the tools, because Rachel's really good about that too. I give them the tools, and then I'll ask them to share it, you know. And those, I'm not asking them to write something up or whatever, but, you know, that's just one of those things. And it's not just with me. I mean, I see it over and over again. Like, even with Rachel's first one, the Chrome Girls Press, you know, there were only like a couple of us that were, you know, promoting it, you know what I mean? Like, and there's nothing, I mean, I don't have anything against the other folks that aren't doing it, but it goes back to the nuts and bolts of being an author. You know, the publishers, whether it's a big publishing house or it's a small print publisher, the publishers are agreeing to publish your work or as an author or publish an author's work because they believe that you can sell books. The point is to sell books. It's not because we want everybody to feel good about being an author. We do, it's, it's like great, but we want to sell books. It's the business side of it. And I think that's the crossover. Like when you're talking about people don't know how to do that, because there's a crossover like between art and selling. And a lot of artists or creative people don't feel comfortable selling their work. Right. But when I say selling, I don't mean, hey, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. That's not what I mean by selling. But when I say selling, it's like you believe in that so much. You believe in your story, Renew You so much that you're going to just be passionate about it when you're talking to people, just like we were talking earlier. You're going to be, you're going to go out there and try to, set up interviews, try to talk to people like you do. You advocate, you help authors with your, form. You've got your interview stuff that you do with other authors. You're getting out there and you're really, you love it so much, or you believe in yourself so much that you're going to say, hey world, this is this thing, and it's not going to be for everybody. Not everybody's going to, want to read, a spec fiction story about, hair care products gone awry, You're going to find people that they don't want that. That's fine. I don't care. Give me 1 million readers. I don't care. Give me 100,000 readers. I don't care. Give me 1,000 readers. I don't care. Just give me the people that actually want to read it. I don't, I'm not looking for a specific number, and as an author, that's our responsibility. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be out here and I'm going to be talking about, Chrome Girls Press, or I'm going to be talking about Falstaff books, or I'm going to be talking about, Ben books with Bobby Nash, or, I'm going to be talking about those things because I know that those folks are doing the things that I want to do. They're working in the trenches just like I am, just like you are, and that's
Absolutely.
that, just to kind of, I know I've been going on a little bit long about your question, but really that's it. I think that's such a big part of, making a difference. It's like if you really care about what you're doing, you're quote unquote sell that to everybody, because you're going to talk about it to them. You don't have to beat them up with it and say, oh, you should buy my thing. That's not selling. Nobody's going to buy something. They might buy something one time, but they're not going to come back. That's not selling. Selling is a profession just like anything else. And, everything we do in life is a commission or a reward-based thing. Our relationships to everything. You don't live in a bubble. We don't, when I say you, I don't mean you, but I mean like us as a, group. People don't live in a bubble. You can't just live your whole life and not have, so it's a give and take, It's like, hey, absolutely. I need, like my mom bought my son this guitar, for his graduation as a reward for all of his hard work, graduating high school. She did it because she wanted to give him something. The reward that she got was the pleasure that she had from giving him a gift and, the way he received it, So even though there wasn't a monetary exchange, it was the relationship, That's all I'm saying with it.
To your son too. But yeah, I hear everything you're saying, and I want to echo that. In particular, the sense that it's really going back to something you said earlier. It's about gathering your community, because some people listening to an author might say, okay, I'm not necessarily interested in that, but they might be interested in the person, and then later on, that's why later on they might find the next time they hear about the person's work, they might be more likely to buy, right? So it's not just about, yes, it's trying to focus on, like if you're in an anthology, supporting that anthology and getting that more visibility, but it's also understanding you as the author, you are out there trying to give repeated exposure to people so that people start to associate you with doing interesting work, right? And like we've talked about, like a range of things, not, yes, about writing and publishing, but I think that's the thing that authors forget. It's not just about one particular thing that you're doing. you're also trying to highlight yourself as someone who is interesting, who people then sort of remember. And like I said, they might not buy that particular thing that you are trying to give visibility to, but they will remember who you are in a larger context. Because think about it, we're getting downloaded information every single, almost every single moment from all of our devices, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's why that idea of marketing and being out there and being engaged really helps, because you have to put yourself out there, multiple times just so people will pay attention, right?
Well, and being sincere and genuine like you are. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's like, being genuine and, being sincere that's what I'm saying. It's not being phony and trying to sell people on whatever, because people can smell that a mile away. They know when you're being phony. They know when you're being fake or insincere. They know that. So, we have a few minutes left, Michele.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I know it's like flown by. We're going to definitely have you back on, but I would like to take the opportunity to make a special announcement, if you don't mind.
No, I'm really.
So Michele and I were talking the other day. We talked for a good little bit, actually, before the show and all, and I just want to announce to the world, next year I'm going to be doing another anthology, and Michele is going to be the first anchor author in that. Yeah, so that's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to being able to work with you. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Especially, I wish, it's kind of crazy, but I wish I had known you when I did that open call like last month. I would have been able to get you into this one. Oh my gosh. But
I believe it's a timing thing.
Yeah.
So I'm really honored and excited, and I'm already thinking of ideas. Yeah, because I want it to be really good, of course. Like.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know it'll be good. Because just like I said earlier, I don't want to say yes to everybody. It just doesn't make sense. I want to say yes when it's the right fit or it's the right thing, because when you got people that you just gel and you synergize with, and it's the right fill, it's magic. I mean, like, there's some je ne sais quoi to that. It's like
it is magic, and I should tell you. I mean, I'm saying this. You can hold me to this, but I really enjoy editing. I should say, being edited. I love working with a good editor. So I'm looking forward to that process too.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I wanted to share that. You have your upcoming, the release, The Renew You is out now, right? And you have your upcoming story in the Chrome Girls Press. What is that story about, real quick?
Yeah, so that's in Stories We Tell After Midnight, Volume 2. And so I feel like you and I are, like, I don't know.
Or anthology siblings.
Something. Yeah, anthology twins. So that story is actually a reprint, and it is basically about a kind of arrogant young man who is from New York City, and he goes down south to visit his cousins.
Oh, nice.
And he learns a terrible family secret.
Uh-oh.
And so bad things happen.
Uh-oh.
Bad things unfold. Yeah,
well, that is so cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I've already pre-ordered oh my gosh, I didn't pre-order that. I've already pre-ordered the other one that she's got coming up, because she has.
She's got a couple.
Yeah, Compass and Break, I think. I get confused. I'm sorry. I know that she just had one, or it's coming up. I know that there's one of them that I just pre-ordered. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to get the Stories We Tell After Midnight Volume 2 when it comes out as well. So, Michele, thank you so much for being on the show today. Where can people check out your stuff?
Oh, well, I'm so appreciative of the time we've had together, and it has flown. So people, I'm all over the place. You can check me out at Twitter, Michele with one L, MICHELE, Berger, BERGER. I also have an author Facebook page. But I really love to come and invite folks to my blog called The Practice of Creativity, which is michelleberger.wordpress.com. I have a lot of resources for writers there, and I love to support writers and creative folk. And I also have a free guide about how to stay connected to your writing life during COVID-19. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
if you want that, that's also on my blog. And yeah, I would love to connect with your audience because I know they're awesome, amazing.
I'm going to put the
folks.
link on the I'm going to put the link on the podcast too when I want to get that up. So, but thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Adam, and thanks to your son too, Sebastian, for playing wonderful music.
Awesome. All right, everybody. If you're just now tuning in, you are listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. Up next are the Savannah at Night group.